Hi, everyone, and welcome into First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. That is Nick Wright. Welcome to a very rainy Monday morning here in New York City. Take the day off. Stay in. Watch us all morning.
I
feel like
that
that's
idea.
good advice,
Absolutely,
right? Do
yeah.
nothing else. We'll write letters to your bosses. Coming up on the program, should we expect some rust from Tom Brady? Plus, Shaq with some harsh words for LeBron. But we start with the big story this morning, Tiger Woods, which had us all captivated all weekend. Tiger hadn't played the Open since missing the cut at St. Andrews back in 2015, but there he was this weekend in just his 9th major in 4 years, doing what most hoped, but few believed he could do, contend. And Tiger got close, even leading at one point on Sunday, but couldn't quite hold the lead, finishing 3 strokes back of the eventual winner, Francesco Molinari. Tied for 6th, he finished the tournament 5 strokes under par. Despite coming up short, Tiger had a glass-half-full outlook on his weekend.
I need to try and keep it in perspective because at the beginning of the year, if you would have said you were playing the Open Championship, I would have said, I'd be very lucky to do that. I talked to, Serena and I are good friends, and I'm sure she'll probably call me and talk to me about it because you got to put things in perspective. She just had a baby and lost Wimbledon finals. I used to just keep it in perspective. And the same thing with me. I know that it's going to sting for a little bit here, but given where I was to where I'm at now, blessed.
First of all, Tiger Woods may be the only person on the planet who could just say, I spoke to Serena over the weekend, and we should just all assume it's Serena Williams. Probably has her on speed dial. See, what did you make of Tiger's near comeback at the Open Championship?
Jenna, Tiger's one of my favorite athletes. He's one of my favorite athletes to cover. But I do a Jenna Wolfe when I listen to Tiger because Jenna was pointed out in Tiger's comeback just how different all the interviews and the type of content. I've been there when Tiger has won a handful of majors. I'm talking about being at the golf course. I've been at the Masters with him, other golf tournaments are around the country. I have never heard Tiger Woods at any point in his career say that I was blessed. Like I haven't heard him in interviews right after reflect on other people. Typically, it's about him. It's about the golf course. He reflected on Serena. The reason why? Because he was at the All-England Club watching Wimbledon, and that relationship that he has with them.
When she came up short.
Yes, yeah. And they're neighbors. They're in South Florida. And then also he talked about his kids. And as an athlete, it's really important if you get the opportunity that your kids actually know what you do. I remember my daughter all the time. She used to fill out stuff at work or ask me when they have career day, Dad, what do you do? And I said, I actually play football. She said, I know you play football for the Vikings, but she said, they pay you money? Yes, they pay us money to do that job. My son was a little bit older, and he had more of an appreciation growing up playing football. But for your kids one day to finally know that you're great at something that they don't know. They live in big houses. They fly on private jets. They live a life that they have nothing. They just happen to be the kids of Tiger Woods. They didn't know how their dad got that way. But, man, he had them for the weekend. They were at the tournament, and for him to try to win in front of them. So, for me, I saw it was so many things that were bigger than golf about Tiger. Jenna, you've been great as far as pointing out. Watch what he says in the press conferences and picking up from that. Like, this is a win for Tiger. I thought he would win a tournament this summer. I thought it'd be tough to win a major because we have so many good young players, and the courses that we were playing the majors on this year, they were not great setups for Tiger Woods. But for him to finish in the position, a T6, to finish where he did, playing the way he did, even getting with a lead on Sunday, I think this is all a tremendous positive for Tiger in the comeback.
Man, all of that is, I think, very well said and something you can relate to directly with kids. If people don't know, I mean, your daughter, when you retired, I'm doing the math in my head, was probably 7 or 8 years old.
Yes.
Right? So Duran's older. So, I mean, she was very young watching you play. So you can relate almost exactly to what Tiger's talking about there, or what he talked about after the round. But the last thing you said, he had a lead on Sunday at the British Open. That was exhilarating. That was, it's a weird thing. It's almost like a high you chase. Like sitting there on your couch on Sunday, watching Tiger Woods climb back into and then take the lead for a major. It had been 11 years. The last time Tiger Woods was in that position, I was a month removed from graduating from college. I wasn't married. I was sitting there with my 4-year-old watching it. And I said to her, the last time he won any tournament, you weren't born. And your older sister was 2. That was a feeling that while I joke about, and I'm serious, that I've picked Tiger to win every major, every time I've had an opportunity to for, I don't know, almost 20 years. I didn't know that we would ever get that moment again. And now it feels like it's a real thing, not just something you hope and wish for, that Tiger Woods winning not just another tournament, but winning another major can happen, particularly when you saw on Sunday, even though it was brief, the Tiger effect. I'm not talking about on Twitter. I'm talking about the other golfers. Like, what happened to the leaderboard on Sunday once Tiger's making his surge? Because Jordan Spieth might be the most talented golfer in his prime right now, and he fell apart. Like, Schauffele fell apart. Like, you saw guys all of a sudden hearing the roars of the crowd, and it reminded me of the mid-2000s.
Yeah, and the guy playing with him, the Tiger effect is real. Molinari, the one he won the golf tournament. This is not about Tiger losing it. Man, you go 37 straight holes at the British Open without a bogey. The whole weekend with the weather, the wind, bad bounces. He won the tournament, and he was actually playing in the group. No one's ever won a major since 2009 playing in the same group as Tiger. So the Tiger effect is real.
What did Tiger do specifically to put himself in that position? What did he do so much better in this tournament than we hadn't seen him do in tournaments
Well, certain people might criticize him, but the one thing that he did was he gave himself a chance. He put the ball in the fairway. First 3 days leading the tournament as far as fairways hit, end up finishing in the top 5 in fairways hit. But it made him play way back, where he was hitting low irons, 4 irons, 5 irons into the green, and the guys were hitting drivers and 3-woods on their tee shot. They were further down the golf course, but it allowed him to stay in the golf tournament the first 2 days. It only led to him shooting even par. People, you can remove the chipping and the putting aspect, wondering, is that a question mark for Tiger? He removed that because he made a bunch of clutch ones, but he just didn't give himself enough birdie opportunities to be able to win this game, this match.
Listen, the people are going to, because it's Monday morning, focus on Sunday. But the reason we were able to have this conversation was another spectacular Saturday round. Yeah. Tiger Woods leads the tour in Saturday scoring average this season on the tour. With this performance, by the way, he got himself into the WGC Bridgestone, which is coming up in a few weeks here in Ohio, if I'm not mistaken. Like, what he did to go, we talked on Friday, just too many guys between him and the leaders. It wasn't so much the 6 shots off the lead as much as it was he was in 30th. He had to jump over 28.
We were saying another weekend where he's probably not going to contend.
Right, 28, 29 guys. And then he goes out and fires a 66 on Saturday, pardon me, and gets himself right there. Gets himself to where it's like, okay, he has a real shot, and then he followed it up Sunday morning with brilliant play. The shot of the tournament for him looked like it was going to be that bunker shot on 10. I wonder if that shot almost emboldened him to take what ended up being his worst shot of the tournament, the flop shot on 11. Like, the bunker shot on 10 was vintage Tiger. Oh my, like, I don't know how you make that shot. And then on the very next hole, he went for almost just as audacious a shot, and that ended up leading to the double bogey, which is what he couldn't overcome.
Yeah, he had a couple different options on the flop shot. He could have played very, very conservative, hit it to the left part of the green, played for a 2-putt or a spectacular 1-putt to try to save his par, but it removed double bogey. When you get into big tournaments like this, I always try to tell you, bogeys tell one story, but the big numbers, double and triple bogey and 3 putts, those are the things that typically eliminate people. To me, it zapped the momentum out of the round that Tiger had. At that point in the golf tournament, man, a bogey would have been so much better at that point. But he took the chance, tried to hit the flop shot like Tiger Woods before. This time, he didn't pull it off, which led to a double bogey. And I believe that just took all the energy and stuff, led to a bogey after that. And it was too tough to catch him down the stretch.
Real quick, on that flop shot, though, because you and I were talking on the phone. It ended, we're going to second guess it. It led to all those things. How far do you think it was from being a perfect shot?
Within a foot. It was within a foot. It was the chance, but it was one of several shots that he could hit. People say, well, that was the riskiest. Tiger has that type of talent. Compared to trying to play conservative, he thought he could pull it off. And in getting to those 14 majors, those were things that he typically could do.
If only the golf world was watching Tiger Woods before, it seems like every sports fan is now right back on the Tiger Woods bandwagon, which is nice to see. Coming up, why is Tom Brady so excited for training camp? That's next. This is First Things First.
So excited.
All right, guys, as someone who never played in the NFL, you guys probably already knew that, I'd imagine for the young guys reporting to training camp has that new car smell to it, exciting and fresh and full of potential. For the veterans, maybe not quite as dramatic, unless you're everything NFL quarterback Tom Brady. The soon-to-be 41-year-old is reportedly excited for the start of this season. He showed up to camp early. Cece, how important is this training camp for Brady, given he missed OTAs?
Not that important. It's not that important. I mean, when you are Tom Brady and you're in the same system, you're going to the same place. If he was playing in a different environment, different team, he had been traded somewhere else, it would be important.
Okay.
But no, he's very familiar with everything that they have in the offense. He's very familiar with the personnel that they have, absent of their left tackle. And training camp in the NFL is not what it used to be. It's not the dog days of August. No, training camp is so easy now. You can't have too many padded practices. You're not going to be practicing twice in one day with helmets and shoulder pads on. The lack of contact. And there's so many teams now that don't go away to some college campus. They do it at their facility. So it's so much like the regular season that it's not that important. Training camp, it's important to building a football team, but it's not that important for Tom Brady, given that he is so familiar with the surroundings and the way the game has changed over the last 5 years.
I understand why it wouldn't be that important, but I also understand why he would be excited. There's a lot of things different about this year's training camp than last year's. First, this is probably the first time in a while he maybe misses football a little bit because, aside from the mandatory mini camp, he has been removed from it. Secondarily, like anyone that's married with kids can tell you this, you always want more time with your wife and kids, and then you have a few months with the wife and kids, and it's nice to get back to work. Sorry, honey, I gotta be early day at the office today.
Real.
And so, I think that's a real thing.
Giselle, I got to be there a day early. Well, why? I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo, he's gonna take your spot. Oh no, he's not there anymore.
No, but I understand.
No. Coach called. He said I need to be there a day. I need to be there early.
Yesterday.
Yeah.
And so I think that is a real thing. And you mentioned Jimmy Garoppolo. I also think for Brady, this training camp is different from, I don't know if it's enjoyability or what the exact word I'd put on it, but guys like Tom Brady don't become Tom Brady without creating obstacles, at least in their mind, even if they're not real. And last year, I'm sure he went into training camp thinking, man, my coach wants to get rid of me. Everybody wants this new guy, even though I just won the Super Bowl. They still. And
so they were all talking about a 40-year-old quarterback.
I'm 40, and so all that, and now he goes into. I feel like
he was talking about Nick Wright.
But, well, okay.
He was talking about Nick Wright.
I wasn't.
That's what. No. Nick Wright. He was playing it back. Yes. This guy's washed up. This is the time he hits the wall. Oh, yeah, absolutely. If he's listening to clips, Nick Wright's on those clips.
I am on them. I'm not the only one on them. In fairness, I watched that Time vs. Time episode as well. I was not the only voice there saying 40-year-old quarterback. That at some point you hit the wall. So for all those reasons, I would get why this training camp feels different, at least a little different, a little fresher. Now, what he has working for him is something that didn't happen this offseason. Josh McDaniels didn't take that job. He doesn't have to learn another new offensive coordinator. He doesn't have to have a new voice in his head, a literal voice in his earpiece during the game. He has the continuity from the coaching staff perspective on the offensive side of the ball.
And one other thing, too, is the last time he got out and played football competitively was a tough loss. And you want to sort of get out, and the next game is going to be, the next game is going to be your the first time you can actually have a clean slate. But then my question to you, CC, would be, if he knows the offense and he knows the personnel and he knows what to expect, why is he so excited to get out there? Tell me, as a veteran player, what is it that makes a guy like Tom Brady want to be there early?
Well, for one, Tom's really good at this. Everyone's excited to do something they really do well. Like, I guarantee if they were running 40-yard dashes, he wouldn't be excited about that. And once you get to training camp, you're one day closer to the regular season. So, yes, there's excitement about training camp. But let's look at the last 4 or 5 years in Tom Brady's life. You guys think that this year is something different because he did time versus time, or because he lost Super Bowl? No, he's lost 3 Super Bowls. All right? So in the last several years, this is just another version that Tom's got to get ready for. You guys remember when he was suspended? I think he was pretty motivated to come back that year, right? And the year before that, they had lost the Super Bowl, right?
The year before, they had lost the Super Bowl in 2011. So they hadn't lost the Super Bowl the year before he was suspended.
Okay, so even before he was suspended, he was trying to get back to where he'd been because they hadn't been there in a long time. And he was in that debate, who's more important, Tom or Belichick? And then once he gets the suspension, he comes back, fights that. He wins the Super Bowl, right?
Yep.
And so he's motivated that next season to come back because he's defending Super Bowl champion, and that was number 5, which then people said, okay, now he is the GOAT. So every season Tom Brady laces it up, he's going to be motivated because there is something at hand. History is at hand every time he takes the field now.
Let me ask you one continuity personnel standpoint. I'm not there. I have no level of concern about Brady's play given the turnover at wide receiver because that is something he is very used to. Even Noah Edelman for the first month. And Brandon Cook's gone. He's used to turnover at wide receiver. He's not used to turnover at his left tackle. Does having a new left tackle change? Is there any adjustment for the quarterback?
Obviously, it's not going to be adjustments. Now, they might become more of a left-handed team. Left-handed team, what is that? Well, typically the ball is marked from a percentage standpoint on the left hash mark, more so than on the right hash mark. So most coaches are right-handed coaches, so they call more right formations to put the tight end to the field. Now, because they have inexperience, they don't have the quality left tackle that they used to have in Nate Solder. They might move the tight end on the other side. Now, it doesn't change the quarterback because Tom has had other weak spots on his offensive line, center, left guard, and right tackle along the way. So they made adjustments to that lack of personnel being in that spot, and they'll do the same thing that they'll do at the left tackle spot until they get some assurances that they can do their typical passing game and not have a tight end help that left tackle.
All right, we got to take a break here. Coming up on the other side, how will Steph Curry impact LeBron's legacy? That's next on First Things First. On Saturday, former champions highlight UFC Fight Night on Fox. Saturday at 6 Eastern on Fox, or stream it live on the Fox Sports app. Time now for us to go viral. With LeBron James leaving Cleveland for the second time in his career, some could say Cavs fans are not taking his departure well. Here's example number 876. A local Cleveland DMV taped a picture of LeBron in a Lakers jersey on their camera to ensure no one smiles for their photo.
Oh, that's smart, actually. I don't think that's the Cavs fans being bitter or anything. I think that's a funny little way to make sure people don't. Why? By the way, sidebar. Why can you not smile for your driver's license
or passport pictures? They don't let you.
Why? I don't understand.
They don't want to see
I don't know that. All mine, I'm smiling. I look better smiling.
Yeah, that's
okay. Like I'm a better looking guy smiling. Not that you might think I look good either way, but I'm just telling you.
I understand. Better looking smiling, but I didn't know that was policy. You're not supposed to smile.
So license, I think you can smile. Passport, you absolutely cannot.
What do? They make you retake it?
Passport?
They won't let you leave the country?
They won't let you see your teeth. That's what they told me at CVS.
At CVS?
Yeah, I went to CVS to get it done. They're like, we can't see your teeth.
Shout out to our friends at CVS.
That's good. Moving right along. Time for some stories to start your morning. I'm just going to keep contributing. The Baltimore Ravens started training camp last week, and apparently the Ravens are practicing plays where multiple quarterbacks touch the ball. Keep in mind, the Ravens have Joe Flacco and drafted Lamar Jackson, multiple quarterbacks. Cece, could they have any success with these types of plays in an actual game?
Well, I'm going to tell you something. You're going to really trick the defense by throwing the ball to Joe Flacco.
That's what I was going to say.
I'm just...
Man, remember in the Super Bowl when Brady split out and he bobbles the ball? Whatever you saw from Brady athletically, that's Joe Flacco on fast forward. Like remember the Mark Sanchez play famously where Sanchez splits out?
This is the problem when you have two quarterbacks on the field, all right? If you put one quarterback at wide receiver, the defensive back should go after the quarterback, all right? But now, the quarterback, if you go after him, you know what the quarterback's going to do? He's going to deem himself defenseless and say, I'm not involved in the play. That's what started happening when they started moving guys outside. You start going after him, and Flacco's going to be like, listen, y'all need to put Lamar out there.
Right, and if you
I'm not built for this.
Right, if you deem yourself defenseless, that's a good way to not get hit, but it also means you're playing that play 10 on 11. You're not a decoy if you deem yourself defenseless. The only way this happens is Lamar being split
What I'm guaranteeing you is the Hall of Fame is not going to take this footage and put it there, all right?
Y'all need to put Lamar out there. Moving on to the Colts. Colts general manager Chris Ballard says that Andrew Luck is good to go for training camp. Boy, we haven't heard that in a few seasons. He'll have no limitations when the Colts kick off camp on Thursday. Chris, how important will training camp be for Andrew Luck?
Oh, now, this is a tremendous training camp for him. But it's also, we have to realize, him being cleared to start training camp. We have a lot of players that start on the PUP, physically unable to perform list, which typically they could be on there from 1 week up to 6 weeks. Typically, they come off during the training camp phase. But for him to start off and being no restriction besides the number of throws that he's going to have, that's great news for him. This is a big training camp for him to get his career back on track.
This was one of the very important benchmark checkpoints for Andrew Luck. If he started out on the PUP list, even if he was only on there for a few days, it would mean everything they told us about, oh, we're right on schedule, it's right where that was not true, or that they had a setback. So this is unlike Brady, where we talked about how important the training camp probably wasn't. This is a vitally important training camp for Andrew Luck, that he does shortly remove that restriction on throwing and be a full go.
Yeah, he needs a regulation football in his hand. All those videos right there, he didn't always have a regulation-size NFL ball in his hand.
All right, to the NBA now. Good news for the 76ers. According to reports, Markelle Fultz's jumper is rebuilt, and he's, quote, vastly improved as a player. Nick, how big of a factor would an improved Fultz be for the 76ers team?
Listen, it would be like a marquee free agent acquisition. If he's the guy that was the consensus #1 overall pick in a stacked draft, that is, we talked last week, how is Philly going to get better other than Embiid and Simmons getting better? Well, he did nothing for them all last year. So if this is accurate, and it's our friend Jordan Schultz reporting it, then that is a major acquisition for them.
Yeah, it's good news to kind of hear. Jordan, good insight. Can we follow it up with some type of video?
You want to see it.
Well, I mean, everyone who can shoot, you have video evidence of them shooting. But what this will do, because he's a big guard who's also a super athlete. He can play above the rim. He can play in transition. If he can hit a shot from 23 to 25 feet, it opens up the court, and you can play him more minutes. He's a super-duper athlete, but, man, he's got to be able to shoot the ball, take advantage of that athleticism.
All right, finally, more one-year signings for the Los Angeles Lakers. This time, Michael Beasley, who started 30 games for the Knicks last season, averaged 13 points per game. He played with LeBron in the 2014 season, scoring 8 points a game in a bench role. Nick, what do you make of the Lakers offseason?
This is what you get when you shop in the bargain bin of NBA free agency. I had our guy Dusty print off a list of every player that signed a one-year deal this offseason. And aside from DeAndre Jordan's $23 million, DeAndre's still a good player, and they paid top dollar for him. They got him for 1 year. Who are these great players that were available for one-year deals? You can say, oh, well, they should have spent the money they spent on Rondo and Lance and gotten Trevor Ariza. That was $15 million is what he signed for. Sure, but he's 33 years old. Like, when you look at it in its totality, like, instead of getting KCP, you want J.J. Redick? So J.J. Redick's a knockdown shooter, but he's a decade older than KCP. They signed for the same salaries, and he's not going to defend anybody. Like, instead of Michael Beasley, would you have rather Glenn Robinson III? I mean, I know he's got a good name, but he averaged 4 points a game last year. Like, Beasley, I will give him credit because he went from #2 overall pick, supposed to be a star, looked like he was never going to find his way in the league, and then accepted his role as a role player, and he has played with LeBron before. What do I expect from Beasley, though? What do I expect from most guys who sign one-year, $3 million deals? Like, not much. And if they're in the rotation, that's a bonus. But the Lakers' season is not going to be made or missed by these types of players, Beasley, Lance. They're just names because they are kind of known to be knuckleheads. Beasley, Lance, JaVale.
So, Cece, why are you bringing a guy like Beasley in then? What do the Lakers get by bringing him in?
Well, what are you going to pick from, though? Like, you can get a guy that doesn't have talent, that can't score the basketball, because it's a matter of, like, what are they getting? Man, he can score the basketball. He's got tremendous size. LeBron and him do have some rapport together because he was on the team with LeBron. But if you look at all the players that LeBron has added in the last 8 years, like most of these guys had some, even Ray Allen. There was question marks about Ray Allen before he started becoming a spectacular six-man there in Miami. Look at Birdman Anderson.
Birdman's a great example because people laughed at that Heat team because the first year in Miami, sorry to interrupt you, Steve, but the first year in Miami, man, they tried anyone and everyone to play center for them. They couldn't figure it out. Birdman had been kicked out of the league for a bad drug problem. They bring him in, and he was a key contributor that they found minutes for. Like, that was kind of a reclamation project. That's what they hope for one of these guys to become.
There's also other guys. Mike Miller resurrected his career with LeBron. Posey, man, what he did. Champ, what he was able to do with LeBron. So LeBron's had a lot of guys. Man, J.R. Smith, we can always use J.R. as an example. They threw him in. What did LeBron say when they made the trade?
They said because the Knicks weren't going to do the trade unless they could include J.R. David Griffin was hesitant to do it because they were going to include J.R. And LeBron says, you bring him here, I got him. I'll take care of him. And that was up until Game 1 of the 2018 NBA Finals, that ended up being accurate.
Yeah, so even Kyle Korver, everyone was looking for Kyle Korver to play major minutes, but with LeBron, these players, even one-dimensional players, have played some of the better minutes that we have seen them play in recent years. So they're hoping that being with LeBron, that these veteran players, that they can help these younger players. And obviously, LeBron feels comfortable moving forward. This is a one-year deal. It's not like we're trying to build the world's best building here, where we got the best foundation thing. No, you have LeBron.
It doesn't work out. It doesn't work out.
There's going to be more attention on these guys because it's LeBron. If he signed anywhere else, we're not even talking about it. But I think that they'll be okay because it's just a 1 year, a rental. And if you don't like them, man, you can get off their contracts easy.
And I'll be very quick here, but the vast majority of guys on this list that signed one-year deals this offseason are 30-plus. It's hard to get young guys, and they clearly want young guys.
The Lakers got enough young guys.
Right? No, I'm talking about
you can't add role players, though, that are young players.
The point that I'm making is, like, the guys who have better names that signed one-year deals, they have better names because they are way past where their peak was. Like, they didn't get any great players on one-year deals, but nobody in the league did.
Right. All right, sticking with the Lakers, LeBron James is entering year 16. Still looking for more titles. Former Laker great Shaquille O'Neal tends to count titles. He said this about LeBron. Follow me here. When I had my 3 rings, I wanted to get 4 before Kobe did. Now, we got 4, then Kobe got 5. I didn't want Tim Duncan to get 5 either, so I thought LeBron's process was going to be, I got 3, Steph's got 3, I'm going to stay in Cleveland, bring some people here, or go to a team I can get 4 before he got 4. Told you to follow me. I don't see it happening because Golden State just added Boogie Cousins, so when I was playing, I didn't want anyone saying they had more rings than me. Seems to me Golden State is going to get at least 2 more. See, will it impact LeBron James' legacy if Steph Curry or Kevin Durant end up with more rings, or has LeBron cemented his legacy as is?
I don't know. I don't know how LeBron feels about it. I know he doesn't feel the way Shaq does, but that's one of the things that held Shaq's career back. Shaq was really petty. Shaq could have stayed in Los Angeles and won maybe a couple more with Kobe. And maybe why Shaq was looking around at Tim Duncan, these other players, maybe he should have been working out. maybe keeping his weight down, because maybe that's what prevented him from winning more titles compared to just sitting there and saying, I don't want Tim Duncan. Why are you hating on Timmy? Timmy's out there taking care of himself. Timmy was in some of the best shape later in his career. Man, he had knee problems and everything, got his weight down. Like, why are you out there hating on him? Kobe earned those. After losing one, being humiliated, he ended up getting 2 more without Shaq. Now, Kobe and Shaq had a personal battle. LeBron, you can't. I don't think LeBron's going to make it personal with these other guys. He has no control over it. I think his legacy, he made the best move for his legacy and also long term. People forget how many teams Shaq played for. Shaq was still looking for another ring even there at the end.
Teaming up with LeBron.
Yeah. So I don't think LeBron's overall psyche is the same. Even though they're both great players, we don't think alike. We don't go about things the same way. And LeBron's career hadn't been like Shaq's career was.
And the other thing is this. Shaq, when he says, I was worried about Kobe, I was worried about Duncan, whether petty or not, those are guys that were legitimately in the discussion for who's the best player of their generation. Is it Kobe? Is it Shaq? Is it Duncan? Like, I personally believe it was Duncan. Some people believe it was Shaq. Some believe it was Kobe. Like, that's a real debate. And so Shaq is, I understand to a degree why Shaq would be, all right, we're going to count MVPs in this category. We're going to count titles. We're going to, all these types of things. There is no discussion about the best player of this generation between Steph, LeBron, and Kevin Durant. That does not exist to anyone trying to have an intellectually honest conversation.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense right there. I never thought of it that way, that now, because Shaq, he had to clarify.
Sure.
Because he wasn't clearly better than those guys. And, man, before Kobe got hurt, the consistency between Duncan and Kobe, those things put him above Shaq.
And LeBron doesn't need the rings to cement his legacy when you're comparing yourself to Steph
and Durant and Steph don't think they're better than LeBron.
Correct. I think Durant thinks he one day will be the best player in the league, but that day is not here yet.
Right. He didn't have the mindset that those three had in Duncan, Kobe, and Shaq.
Right. That was a real, like, Duncan is so quiet, you don't know. But, like, I'm sure Duncan felt like, and he was correct, by the way, there was a long time he was the best player in the league.
Yes.
And one thing Duncan has going for him, and this is why I think he's the 6th greatest player ever, and I will always stand for Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan was the best player on 4 championship teams. So this is something that gets lost in the wash sometimes. We just count the rings, right? So Kobe's got 5 of them. And kudos to him. One of those rings, and he averaged 15 points a game on 36% shooting, but the ring still counts, right? Mm-hmm. So Duncan was the best player on 4 champions. He has 5 rings, but the best player on 4. LeBron's been the best player on 3 champions, obviously. Kobe, that's why those last 2 were so important for Kobe. Kobe's the best player on 2. Shaq's got 4 rings, but he was only the best player on 3 of them. It's the biggest feather in Jordan's cap, obviously. It's not just the 6 rings. He was the best player on all 6. Magic's got 5. He was the best player on 3 of those. Kareem's got 6. He was the best player on 3 of those. Like, so when we do Steph and KD, Steph's been the best player on a team that's won a title once. KD's been the best player on a team that's won a title twice. Even if they go and win some more, like, it's going to be tough for Steph and KD in any metric, really, to equal or come close to LeBron, aside from raw ring count. Now, raw ring count, I would imagine, if I had to bet money, I would say Steph will finish with more rings than LeBron James. I would be surprised if he didn't. Like, it's going to be hard for LeBron to get past 4, and I'd be surprised if Steph doesn't get at least 4. So you follow me? But that's not how I evaluate all-time players.
But that's why when you do evaluate all-time players, it gets a little blurry because rings obviously factor in, but it can't factor in with a guy like LeBron, who's so clearly the player of his generation right now. So you can't have the same LeBron-Jordan conversation as far as rings go with LeBron and then Steph, KD at the same time. He's already cemented his legacy.
Yeah, I mean, it's no doubt. It's really hard to have these conversations, and you have to try to figure out some type of angle. If it's not rings, is he the best player? How many MVPs? But that's why I tried to, and someone pointed out on my Twitter, like, you should talk about your favorite player compared to the best player. Because if you like a player, it's going to be hard in your argument or your conversation to be able to really understand other people's point. Michael Jordan and what he did is second to none. Winning 3, then winning 3 more, and all those times being the best player on the court, that to me is the unapproachable. Now, longevity, LeBron, all that, yeah, he has all that going in his favor, but 6 times MJ was the best in the finals, and they won. And that right there is the stat that kills all the arguments.
So the other thing that I think is interesting with what Shaq's talking about in regards to LeBron's decision, because he says go to Cleveland or go somewhere you could win right now. That's probably Philly or Houston. You got to keep in mind for LeBron the last 2 years. In the last 2 NBA finals, LeBron has averaged 34, 10, and 10. And he's won a single game. Not a ring, a single game in those NBA finals. I think part of LeBron's math this summer was, to a degree, man, I can be at this level. I can play my A-plus game in the biggest spots. It doesn't always end up with a ring. So that's where we discuss why his family, why the lifestyle, why all of that had a bigger role in this decision than other ones before, because whether or not you win a championship, we saw it these last 2 years, is not up to the individual player,
right,
no matter how well he plays.
All right, let's take a break. Coming up, talk some football. Well, the Vikings' new offense make them the favorites in the NFC, just like that. That's next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. Former head coach Eric Mangini's back with us after a little time off. Coach, looking tan and ready to go.
I am good. My training camp tan ready.
See that?
Yeah,
and you also brought a
good to go.
fantastic nor'easter through the...
Well, it's the least I could do.
Thank you very much.
You know how much
I
I care.
Appreciate that. Hey, if you're an NFL team who came one game away from the Super Bowl last year and then added star quarterback Kirk Cousins, you're probably going to be good this year. That is where we stand with the Minnesota Vikings and their high potent offense. Vikings tight end Kyle Rudolph said, quote, "It's been a lot of fun to see what new offensive coordinator John
DeFilippo
can do with all.
She didn't practice that all morning.
No, she didn't.
She really did. No, I'm giving you credit. You did.
She should have. With all the chess pieces, said Kyle Rudolph, at his disposal. CC, let me start with you on this one. How dynamic can this Vikings offense be?
Well, I think first fans should know, as far as DeFilippo, what he's done in a couple other places in Cleveland. He had a tight end that can't outrun Jenna. And definitely that's Jenna can run. Just relax, Jenna. He is a professional athlete. Okay? Like,
you see how
I tried to include her in the show. Okay. Watch how I do this.
You can't outrun me?
DeFilippo also got the name right. When he was in Cleveland, he had a tight end that couldn't even outrun Nick Wright. All right? Nick Wright's got more ability than Gary Barnidge. Gary Barnidge, man, is not a tight end that you would think would be highlighted in an offense. Excellent job. Great route runner. Took advantage of that offense and the impact that DeFilippo had on him. And then the next year, you get Zach Ertz. Both of these guys end up in the Pro Bowl. Let me tell you about Kyle Rudolph. Outstanding basketball player. He is a lot better athlete than any of these guys will be. So I look for him to take advantage of some of those matchups that they're going to have. Now, the problem is the Vikings are going through a crisis. And you know, one of your friends that you coach with, Tony Sperano, the offensive line coach, passed away this weekend. And trying to recover from that, it will have an effect because the Vikings, their worst unit on their football team is their offensive line. So Kyle Rudolph is a tremendous blocking tight end and a tremendous receiver. So they've had him stay in an awful lot. So whoever they decide is their offensive line coach, they're going to have to decide, do we go one back, play two tight ends, because then we can get Kyle off, have the other tight end stay, which I believe will be one of the predominantly one of the sets that they're going to use, because DeFilippo's had a tremendous amount of success, and Kirk Cousins has been great throwing the tight end since he was the starter there in Washington. So you're talking about a perfect marriage between the offensive coordinator, a quarterback, and a really talented tight end. I look for them to be able to utilize the tight end more, and this is going to be a special part of an offense that I believe is going to be very exciting, Coach.
And I really like Kyle Rudolph. I think he's extremely talented. I think in this offense he has a chance to take another jump. I totally agree with you there. The issue for me is how well does the offense coordinator and the new quarterback, how quickly can they mesh? What kind of chemistry can they build? And then how quickly do those two guys build chemistry with everybody who was there? And it's not that easy to just insert a quarterback from a different system or insert a coordinator from a different system and expect it to just bounce right away. And the effect of losing Tony, not only from an offensive line perspective, because he's got tremendous experience there, but he's also got head coaching experience. He had offensive coordinator experience. That's a different type of coach, especially for a young offense coordinator, because he gives that play caller insight that you don't typically get from an offensive line coach. And then Tony's other aspect was his passion, his love, the effect he had on the players, the effect he had on
motivator,
the head coach, and he had this calming influence. That's going to be missed just tremendously.
And it was, listen, all deaths are tragic, but it was also, it was sudden. It was out of nowhere. It's not like Tony Sparano had been sick. This was, I mean, if you guys saw the story, it's unbelievable. He and his wife, they go to the hospital at the end of last week. He's having chest pains. He gets discharged, and then she finds him after having had a heart attack this week, and it's awful. And there's the football perspective, as you mentioned, but there's also the perspective from the other coaches and human beings, the offensive line, all these things about losing someone that suddenly and that quickly, and how you deal with that while, as you mentioned, training camp is when everyone's coming together, right? Like that, for some guys it's really important, for some guys not as important, and now you have the specter of this, at least for the time being, hanging over the entire organization.
Yeah, and his impact, he had a great relationship with the head coach, and for me, when I had Bill Callahan on my staff, who was a former head coach, the ability for me to go down to his office and say, hey, this is a problem I'm dealing with. What do you think? And he could give me that insight. And they also had a personal relationship. Yeah. And then for a young offensive coordinator, look, I know he did it for a year in Cleveland, but he's still a young offensive coordinator, to be able to go to a person like that and say, hey, what do you think? Give me some ideas, give me some thoughts. Add to that the moderating, calming effect that he had on the group in general because of his personality, because of who he was. That's going to be really hard for them to deal with.
How much does that change, plus a young offensive coordinator, how much does all of that affect the fact that you do have a new quarterback in there, albeit a successful one, but a new quarterback that's going to have to come in and learn the system now?
Well, I do think it's actually an advantage to bring in a new offensive coordinator with a new quarterback, in the sense that the quarterback's going to have to learn.
Yes.
Everybody else is going to have to learn. They're all learning together now, as opposed to if the quarterback just was inserted with the previous system where he was the only one learning what had to happen. But that chemistry, how well do those two guys mesh, and how quickly do they see things the same way is going to be a big factor.
Yeah, all teams will say training camp's important. For teams like the Vikings, it's more important because of the things that they didn't have in place. Also, the Vikings are changing environments. They are not going to Mankato State, where they've always gone to training camp. They're staying at their new, pristine facility. Oh, they got to rough it there. I mean, it's a multi-million-dollar. Them and the Dallas Cowboys have the two best practice facilities in the NFL. So now they're trying to adjust to that, but they're doing it at home. It's a lot of adjustments, but tremendous expectations on that coordinator and on that quarterback.
Well, the expectations on the quarterback is what I want to get into for a moment here, because Case Keenum, statistically, if we did one of those blind stat tests, even though the Vikings were 13-3 last, you wouldn't believe how great his stats were. I mean, he had 98 quarterback rating. He had a better than 3-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, averaged 7.5 yards per attempt. But it's still Case Keenum. So even though those were great production, I think for most people going into this season, we're like, okay, well, we got better at quarterback. We just gave the first ever fully guaranteed long-term contract in NFL history to a guy. We need to be much better at quarterback. It's hard to be much better. It's not hard to be much better than Case Keenum in a vacuum, but it's hard to be much better than Case Keenum was last year for that team.
But the thing about it is, a lot of times what we see, and we see the numbers. Let me tell you about the Vikings and their play calling. All right? Because they did a job for Case Keenum. All right? Because Case has been known. And the offensive coordinator, who is now the Giants head coach, he did a great job. And they had a tremendous amount of trepidation with Case. Even when Case was hot going into the playoffs, they didn't have a whole bunch of confidence in him. And if he had not played well early, they could have easily pulled the trigger on him.
Well, that's what I was going to get to, is that the numbers look great. But we know, I mean, this is a team that obviously we followed all year long and you're very close to. We know that they were not giving him the full menu of options for this, what I think is a super talented skill position group. They didn't have Dalvin Cook. They will have him. We talked about Kyle Rudolph. It's not even to mention Thielen and Diggs, who's one of the best duos of wide receivers in the leagues. You can now, especially with Cook coming back, you can go into a game, if you believe Kirk Cousins is the quarterback they clearly believe he is in Minnesota, and say, However, whatever you're trying to take away from us defensively, we can go beat you the other way. If this is a game where you're real worried about a running game, we trust Kirk Cousins drop back and throw the ball 40+ times. If you think if you're just going to play, never going to put 8 in the box, and you're going to really guard against our wide receiving options, we trust Dalvin Cook and Kyle Rudolph to beat you. Like, I think the Vikings have as much of a diversity of options offensively as any team in football this year.
But just because you paid the quarterback like Superman, it doesn't make him Superman. And I give the Vikings a lot of credit last year for understanding what Case Keenum's weaknesses were, what his strengths were, and playing to those strengths. They need to figure out how Kirk Cousins fits into their offense, what his true strengths are, what his weaknesses are, and what you don't want to get into is saying, well, look, he should be this. Well, if he's not that, don't put him in a position where he can fail. And even though you've got these high expectations and you've committed so much to him, do what he does best. And sometimes that's hard to do initially.
All right, Case Keenum was awesome. Coach, we're going to see a little bit later on in the show. Only one of the
Jenna's guy. Jenna's a Broncos fan this year.
Still a starter in the league. Coming up, can Carmelo Anthony make the Rockets any better? That's next. This is First Things First. I don't know what Cece's doing. Back here on First Things First with NBA
catching lobs there.
Sarah
That would have been
Gustav.
catching the lob because you did the dunk. Threw you a lob.
Let me see.
Cece can pass it and dunk it.
Man.
You know, like throw it up to
Jenna,
yourself.
the last time you were throwing a lob, you offensive goaltended
I got
through
that
the
one
rim,
wrong.
knocked it out.
I got zip it wrong, but I'm done getting things wrong.
Okay. All right,
I'm on
it's
it.
7:35
Throw me a lob.
East Coast time.
I'm ready for it. See, and
All right.
Sarah and Nick.
All
Here
right,
we go.
we got you, Jenna.
I got your back, Jenna.
Dialed in and focused. Here we go. Talk some Melo. What does it say?
It was just waiting.
Carmelo Anthony and the
Here we
Houston
go.
Rockets continue to claim they're just friends, even though rumor has it they're far more than friends. Rockets GM Daryl Morey said the Rockets are in the mix to sign the veteran forward, while James Harden added that adding Melo would be a great acquisition for us. Sarah, given where the Rockets are right now, does Melo make them a better team?
I don't know. I don't know, and that's probably not the correct answer. Or in what
But there would have to be a reason why. I don't know is not a good answer on team.
Yes, I got no big argument about this.
But I think there's a setup, like, I don't know, because of something.
I believe that Melo could make them better. Do I think he can make them significantly better? No, not necessarily. But I do believe Melo can make them better because of the buyout. They're signing him in a minimum. So they're not paying a lot of money for him. He's a player who, if he accepts his role, if he understands how which is a big if, and that's where the question mark comes in. If he accepts his role, what they need out of him, what he can contribute, then yes, I believe that he could make them a little bit better. You add a 10-time All-Star and towards the end of his career, but he can still do some things for you on the offensive end. I'm not sure Melo is ready to accept his role, and that's going to continue to be the question until we get them out on the floor, because we spent an entire year last year watching him with the Oklahoma City Thunder, wondering if he was going to accept the role that he was in. So now, the second year, now after he was waived, and, you know, does he reevaluate of being with a team that, again, has the potential to win? Will he do what it takes? And that's where I don't know.
I think this season should be easier for Melo. I'm not going to get into how a guy reacts to a buyout and all that kind of stuff, because Melo's to the point in his career, if we have to keep trying to tee him up, well, what do you think, Melo? Do you think Melo understand? At some point, you know, you either have to listen to your body, you have to either listen to your career, what it's saying. He just got his contract just got purchased, so that should speak to him. But I'm sure he's talking to Chris Paul, and the conversation should go something like this: man, what do you and James Harden need? This ain't about Melo. See, this is about the other players. This is about the talent. Man, what do they need? Because Trevor Ariza, Luke Richard, Bob Moute, they knew what these guys needed. Now, Luke Richard, he couldn't do it in the playoffs, but there was a clear pattern, game plan for what they need these role players to do. Chris Paul needs to sit down with Melo and tell him, man, this is what we need you to do. Because James Harden had to sit down with Chris Paul last season and tell him exactly what he needed. And that worked out. So we had all these questions going into the season. Will this work out? They had a conversation. It worked out. Melo, at this point in his career, he should be doing what these other players need, because he is strictly a role player. And they do need his spot-up shooting ability. They do need his scoring. It should be easier because Houston can score the basketball so much easier and in so many different ways than OKC could. So I believe that his role, it should be carved out, it should be talked about, and I believe that he should, at this point in his career, he should be able to do what they need him to do.
And he should be able to accept that. And the reason that I'm optimistic about this, and the question is an important one. The question is not, does Melo make the Rockets better than they were last year?
No.
It's as they presently sit here, having lost Ariza, having lost Mbah Moute, with Chris Paul a year older, as they sit here today, are they better with him or without him?
Even Melo's detractors couldn't say that, oh, Houston, something, they're not a better team today if they sign
Unless you believe that he won't do any of those things. If you believe...
Well, they don't have anybody else.
He's the best available player on the market right now.
Absolutely agreed. Unless you... Listen, I think if you think Melo's going to come in there and not acquiesce to what they need, there are some guys that are still technically quality basketball players who are bigger negatives than positives for teams trying to win a championship. I think that's how some people view Carmelo Anthony. The reason that I will be confident that he will be able to help them if he signs with them is there is a team that would sign him that has better weather, that has the same no state income taxes, that is not trying to go win a championship, that will feature him offensively, and that has one of his best friends still there. And that's Miami. If Melo doesn't...
Oh, let me tell you about veteran players going to Pat Riley, though. You don't see them going down there. Pat Riley got that body fat test.
10% body fat?
10%. No. And the workouts are brutal. Okay? So you don't go to Miami as an aging veteran in a buyout unless
you're going to coast.
Unless you have a different mindset than Melo has ever had in his career. So I never thought that was going to be a good match anyway.
Okay, well, I guess you have a perception of Melo as not a hard worker because he's never been chiseled, or you have a perception of Melo's work ethic that I've never had.
Well, if you read Melo, you read Men's Health magazine, he did an article in there as far as the things that he eats, and he didn't take care of his body. All right, so it's not me making up stuff.
Well, go ahead.
I was just going to say that is something I don't think he ever prioritized. And it seemed like he started to, but I don't know, he doesn't view that the way many NBA players do.
I think you can.
But this is the problem, though. You can get away with that when you're younger.
When you're young and athletic.
But when you get older, it plays a part in who you are as an athlete.
I agree with all of that. I think we can, to me, how you eat is a different bucket than how hard you work.
Yes.
You mentioned in Miami, you're not going to get there.
Let me tell you something. You can't remove both of them because how well you eat, it helps how hard you're going to work from the energy that you get from your food.
There's no question about it, but you can be a guy that makes bad food choices and still be a guy that busts your ass in the gym. Like I do not view Melo as a guy.
That wouldn't be real smart though.
Okay, so you can say he's not making the best choices, the best decisions for his overall fitness, but that's a different conversation than this is a guy that doesn't work hard, or this is a guy that is there to coast, or this is a guy that is not going to continue to work on his game. If he chooses Houston, and I think he will choose Houston, he's doing it eyes wide open about who the coach is, about how close they were to a championship, and he would be doing it because he wants to be a part of that. It would be an illogical decision for him to choose to go to Houston with the same exact mindset he had last year in Oklahoma City.
I would wonder, though, does he understand the limited touches he'll get, how they want to integrate him into the offense? Because as of right now, like, James Ennis is not going to be your starter. It's going to be Carmelo Anthony. So in my mind, is Carmelo looking at this like, yeah, I get it, but I want to win, and I could also start here. I'm not convinced he entirely understands and buys into the fact that his role offensively will be different.
It's the same thing we talked about, though, with Boogie. Like, does Boogie understand his role is going to be completely different, and if he thinks he's going to be the guy that's going to have the same type of numbers, it's not. Melo didn't seem to want to embrace any type of different role when he saw the team changing last year in Oklahoma City, and it doesn't look.
He was coming off a 22-point-a-game season when he got to Oklahoma City. He didn't know. This is not yet where he was at in his career. Like, this is my question that I would just have for you, C, or you, Sarah. Why would we know it, but Melo wouldn't? Why would we be able to see something?
It's a matter of what we deem to be important. Like, we think that Melo is his last dying wish to win a championship. We don't know that. Like, we don't know that. We know he won't play the forward position. Don't want to do that. We know he's not going to play great defense. All right? So
Are you saying why would we understand what his role should be and what point he's at in his career?
Why would we understand that if he goes to the Rockets, that you're not going to be the featured offense, that you're going to have decreased touches? Why would the entire world know that except for him?
I think,
because he wants to play basketball.
He's a future Hall of Famer. He's a future Hall of Famer that's used to putting up 20-plus points a game every season of his career.
Yeah,
and he's playing with guys that he believes that could raise his level of play.
Everyone don't look at themselves and truth tell. Oh, you know something? I need to play a little defense. No, they don't do that. So if Melo did that, my commentary would be totally different.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.